Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to Full Court Press. Long time since we've heard that music. So today we are missing one. We're missing Ariel Latias with due to health and safety protocols. Hopefully he'll be back soon. But I got my guy here, Mr. Worldwide, the Cowboys fan, the Paramore fan, the man of many, many talents, Marco Romo. Marco, how are we doing tonight?
Ooh, I am jet lagged and a motherfucker, but we're back. I'm glad to be back talking about basketball though.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time. We got a lot to talk about. So we're gonna start things off. We're also gonna have Sean Rochester joining us later in the show. As you know, Coach Rochester, he's got some stuff going on. Yui, how you doing tonight? So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about these all-star races because this is probably like the wonkiest year in terms of all-star voting because normally games played has a huge impact, but almost everyone's had COVID at this point. It's affected some more than others. So it's been really weird, right? But for the Western Conference, we'll start there. There's three guys that I would say are complete locks to be all-star starters, right? It would be Steph, LeBron, and Jokic.
Yeah, I got those same three locks.
You have okay, so you have those. Personally, I have Ja as the fourth, as the second guard, the fourth guy in the West. Do you agree with that, or are you taking Luca?
I was actually listening to a podcast about this, arguing about like who should be the second guy, and I really don't see any other argument for anybody else but Ja, especially with the Grizzlies record.
So I agree with you there. Ja, I mean, he's playing at like a all NBA level right now, almost like 25, 6-5, leading one of the best teams in the NBA right now, which we'll get to a little bit later. Um, so the fifth spot, the third front court spot, or however you want to decide it, whether it be a wing or a big. I don't know if Jokic has forward eligibility, but in the West, is there like any clear cut favorite right now, or is this something we're gonna have to wait over the next 2 or 3 weeks to figure out? Because I have a name that comes to mind. It's just I personally hate it, and I think everyone else is going to hate it as well.
I kind of no, I don't know where you're gonna go with that, but I feel like it's one of those like who's gonna be the hottest at that point, or who's gonna be the biggest story. Because that happens a lot in all-star voting is who's gonna be the biggest name jumping out to everybody outside of the big stars that are already foundational pieces. So I think at this point it's up in the air who's going to be starting. It might actually come down to the fan vote.
Which is disgusting because the fan vote is a very toxic place. Voting on Twitter is just unbelievable. We've seen some really cool ways to get some votes. Shout out Chef Trilly on that one. So with if you had to pick right now, today, voting ended today, who would be your fifth Western All-Star starter?
Oh, let's introduce Sean first before
Oh
we
my God, we
get
got
into
Sean
that.
Rochester, Coach Rochester
He's in the
from the
dark.
car, live out of practice. How you
Right
doing,
out of
Sean?
practice, guys.
Oh my God, that's dedication. That's culture right there.
But yeah, before we have Sean in the dark here, I'm going to answer that question. Is I I was kind of going back and forth on this, and I feel like you might. I don't know if you're gonna go with this as well. This might be the person that you're gonna be like everybody's gonna hate this. But right now, I'm not Anthony Davis for people that
Of
might be
course,
thinking that.
of
Hell
course.
no. I don't think he has enough games played anyway, so I
He
don't
doesn't
think
have
that will
enough
even
shots
count.
made. It's there's a lot of issues with AD right now. So definitely calling spade a spade. He's not making the All-Star team, I don't think.
And I would have had Paul George here if it wasn't for the games missed and stuff. Because before he went down, he was having a hell of a season, even with the 3-point shot not being there for him. He was still hitting like ridiculous in terms of the mid range. So he would have been my pick here if he didn't get injured. But yeah, who I have right now, uh, next to LeBron and Jokic, we have those two established in the
Yeah.
front court. So I think I might go with Draymond, honestly, which is
Ooh.
kind of wild to me to say right now, but I think they're going to reward the guys that are on the number one team right now, and they
Yeah.
might reward them first with Draymond instead of Andrew Wiggins. And it's kind of crazy to see a guy that's not even averaging more than 10 points a game right now, starting in the All Star game. But that's kind of who I'm at right now. I think they're going to reward Draymond and the Warriors for how good they've been this year so far, and I think they're going to go with Draymond at that position.
That's interesting. I like it. Like personally, I would be totally okay with Draymond being there. But It is interesting because of that statistical dilemma, right? Like you have Chris Paul last year. Some people even said that he wasn't an all-star when we all knew he was an all-star caliber player because, he doesn't have enough points. He doesn't have enough this, that, and the other. Draymond is absolutely probably one of the top 5 most impactful players in the Western Conference right now. It's just, I don't think he will get credit. So Sean, updating you on the all-star voting, we're saying, assuming that the 4 starters in the West are going to be Steph, Ja, Jokic, and LeBron, and then you have one other front court player. Who do you think, off the top of your head, who is that player right now?
Yeah, I said Draymond. And I don't know if you guys discussed him already. Obviously, statistically, he's not going to stand out in comparison to other people, but I just think his impact on a team that's obviously doing great. I think that's where when I'm making my voting, I'm going more to the value of good teams or great teams and putting more of those guys on there rather than just looking at stats. So that's where I went. I know, Ja, I think he may be on the fence of not starting. I think he's earned it at this point. He's pushed himself into that area.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Ja's definitely earned it. He's a lock for me at this point. So Rao, you read the question here. Doesn't Wiggs have more votes? LOL, I know Trilly was pushing the Wiggs agenda. So yes, but at the same time, like anyone who's watched those two teams play, I believe you're taking Draymond over Wiggins. It's just statistically speaking, Wiggins does a lot of more things that voters go for. Sean, Adam is telling you to turn your lights on. So I'm gonna drop this bomb here of this looks like the Batman right now. I'm gonna drop this bomb of this player. Okay, I think I would love for it to be Donovan Mitchell. But I think it's gonna be his teammate, Rudy Gobert. Statistically, he's averaging 16 and 15. He's playing unbelievable defense once again. The Jazz are once again a well-oiled regular season machine. It would not shock me if they ended up getting Rudy Gobert in. Not something everybody wants to see unless you're like in the analytics crowd, but Rudy's kind of getting the job done right now. Marco, do you hate this? How much do you hate this? Because personally, I feel sick saying it, but I feel like given the context, he might deserve it.
This is kind of why I went with Draymond because he impacts the game like Rudy does in terms of defensively, but Draymond's a lot cooler than Rudy, and I just hate watching Rudy in All-Star games. But I think he's really deserving of it in terms of starting. And I went back and forth between those two, but it's you could go with either guy, and I'd be cool with it. Rudy's probably been the only reason the Jazz defense isn't cratering right now.
Yep.
Or most of the time he's off the floor. They're really bad. One of the best kept secrets is how the Jazz have a really bad perimeter defense that gets wiped away because Rudy's out there cleaning their mistakes. So I understand. And honestly, Rudy's numbers are actually not that bad. And he's actually been more offensively.
71% from the field scoring.
Yeah, he's been more involved in the offense this year. I think Quinn Snyder's talked about how they need to involve him more and find him more on those, cuts that he's open a lot of times. They just don't see him. They've actually done a lot better job of that. And I honestly don't hate it. It's just Rudy Gobert might be the least all-star gamey guy. He's like the opposite of LaMelo Ball in terms of who you want to see in an all-star game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of disgusting. So Sean, we're gonna pivot to the Eastern Conference here. So the starters, it's all really doesn't make a lot of sense, but you kind of know it's gonna be like DeMar, Joel, Giannis. You might get a Heat player here or there, and then some of the names that we already know. But I kind of do want to focus on like the upcoming like guard spot. So there's 5 names that come to mind when I think of players that could make it as like a reserve guard: Darius Garland, Fred VanVleet, Drew Holiday, Tyler Hero, or Kyle Lowry. Pick 2 of those players to be all-stars this year.
Man, when you presented that earlier, I was like trying to figure out how to whittle that down. I think I'm gonna go Fred VanVleet. I think the recent play, he just got Player of the Week. I think that definitely helps. And I think the Raptors are what, like 6th, 5th? I mean, they're pushing up there.
Yep.
In the standings.
6th right now, I believe, or 7th, but like really
7th?
close with Cleveland.
But I mean, they're obviously elevating their play in comparison to how they started off and had a lot of injuries. And then the other guy I went with, I'm going to go Garland. And again, just like I said before, like I think the play of the Cavs, they deserve a representative, and I think he's the one that would be that representative. I leaned into Drew or Kyle as my next choices. I don't think Tyler really realistically has a chance anymore just because of a couple struggles recently, but that's okay. Like, I think overall he's having a good season to be in that mention, but I would go Garland and I would go Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, so we got a lot of Fred VanVleet and Garland. I actually totally agree. Those are the players that I would pick too. He's been slept on, I feel like, his entire career. People just saw him as like, oh, he's the guy that played really good against the Warriors and then haven't paid attention to him. Like, FVV is a really good player. He does fantastic things. Hope he gets his credit this year. Marco, are you in agreement? Is it FVV and Garland?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same boat there. I'm surprised you didn't mention LaMelo in terms
I
of
think
the
he's a
All-Star
shoo-in to
guys.
make it. Like, I'm not considering LaMelo not making
Really?
it. Yeah. He
That's
just has the
surprising
name
to me.
cachet at this point where, like, people just love to see LaMelo in those moments. Like, I'm not even second-guessing him.
That's surprising to me that now I'm surprised that you just have him in there already. But he's one of the guys that I thought was more on the fence. But I think if Charlotte keeps, staying above 500, I think he's definitely going to get in, especially, how much the players and the fans and even the coaches actually do love him because he's such a team-oriented guy. He's really a scorer second, and he's such a fun player that I'm with you. I actually see him making it in terms of Charlotte's record surprising me, really, even though their defense is horrific. Who cares about defense in an All-Star game?
Nope.
Nobody cares. But yeah,
LaMelo
I'm on the same
needs to
boat
be in the
with-
All-Star. Like, Trey and LaMelo lineups, for some reason, will go absolutely crazy in the All-Star game. So, no love for Drew Holiday here? None at all?
He
would be my
crazy.
third choice, but
Yeah.
He's such a good player. It's funny how he just gets swept under the rug a little bit every single year. Like, absolutely an all-star caliber player, like one of my favorite defenders in the entire NBA. But it is interesting. And yeah, Raymond Forbes with a fantastic point here. Have to put a Heat player in. We have a winning record. The Heat absolutely are going to have the record to deserve it. Like, this team could be the second or first seed by the time that the All-Star break comes around. But it's been such a team effort. And the one guy that I think has been spearheading the movement, which is Kyle Lowry, he just doesn't really put up those numbers, right? Like, he should get the CP3 recognition, but I don't think he's going to. Marco, you have something to say.
Yeah, I just had a really funny thought that if they do end up the first, Eric Spoelstra might be coaching the All-Star game with none of his players there, which would be kind of hilarious.
Yeah. Recruiting, Spo's going to go crazy. Sean, no Duncan Robinson on the All-Star ballot?
yeah, I mean, I had him 12th, the last spot. He just edged out a little bit. I mean, he's averaging 7 threes over his last 2 games. It's hard when you're coming off the bench, but he's a team player. I think that'll earn some fan votes, media votes, coaches votes, and throw him in the skills challenge. He's really expanded that part of his game, and 3-point contest, and maybe next year the dunk contest. I don't know. We'll see.
Anything can happen. So there you go, Sean Rochester, Duncan Robinson's godfather, I believe. Is that what we're calling you now?
Something like that. Whatever you want to call me.
Yeah, so we'll let's transition to the crazy stat of the day. You guys know I love doing these as a staple in the full court press rotation. So this is a Heat question because I don't know if we're going to do too much Heat talk today. Over the last 20 games, which is roughly all the games that Bam has missed, guess which Heat player has the lowest defensive rating or the best defensive rating? And this player has to have played in at least 5 or more games. So that does not exclude the 10 days. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'm going to guess Yurt.
Okay. Sean?
To make sure I'm right, we're going the best defensive rating, correct?
Yeah, so the lowest number.
I'm going to say PJ Tucker.
Interesting. Okay, so Marco actually got it right. I'm surprised that you got it right. Omer Yurtseven leads the Miami Heat with a defensive rating of 104.9 over the last 20 games and 22 minutes a game. I think a lot of this is due to his 21.7 rebound percentage and his 12.4 offensive rebound percentage. He just takes possessions away from the other team. So I saw that and I was actually shocked that he was the best defender, but I guess his team's been a little deteriorated recently.
I think that also helps that the rebounding stuff, which actually Dwayne Dedman had that a lot. He had one of the better defensive ratings last season for Miami. One of the things that also works for them is he's playing with the starters and not as much with the 10-day guys off the bench. But even when you consider they've actually started and played a lot of the 10-day guys, so it's kind of remarkable that he's even still putting up those numbers with the lineups he's still out there with. It's kind of impressive. We don't believe Yurt's a great defender here, so we're not trying to push that agenda. By the way, you spoke, but I want to get back to a quick point about the All-Star game, about the Heat not having a representative.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Bam before the Yurt thing. Bam would have probably been a shoe-in to make it if he had been healthy, which is kind of crazy considering. I think it's mostly because it's how weak the front court position is in the All-Star for the East. And it's either if Jimmy or Bam had been, a little more healthy, they would have been a shoe-in to get in, much like the 1920 season. It's kind of weird, though, considering how Bam's not really had a great season, but comparative to the rest of the East, especially with the teams that are far worse, like the Pacers who have Sabonis, but, Sabonis is on a bad team. So it would have been wide open for them to take. It's just kind of disappointing for me for Bam because he's going to miss the All-Star game for probably the second consecutive season where he would have been much deserved to have one. And, that resume would have looked way better. But, we can't get into self-accolades at this point. But, it's kind of sad. I've kind of felt bad for Bam there.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely deserving of 3 straight All-Star appearances. But, sometimes you just get the short end of the stick. Want to get to a question here before we transition to a West Coast player. Question from JP. Gad, prediction time. Does Miami get within striking distance of a top 2 seed by the time Vic and Bam are back? So I think they could get that at as early as this week. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, they're only like 2 games out of first. Like a game and a half maybe out of second. I haven't looked too much at the standings. I know we're third right now. So Marco, let's say within the next 2 weeks, let's say Bam and Vic come back in 2 weeks. This is just a guesstimate. That's no information at all. I'm literally just guessing. Just putting that out there because people really, really get emotional about this Victor Oladipo thing. Do you think the Heat will be the 2 seed or a top 2 seed within the next 2 weeks?
Within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to say yes, only because they have 8 games at home in their next 9. And I think they won 6 straight at home, which is kind of went unheard of for this team that's kind of struggled at home, like in the middle of last season, which is kind of weird considering how SPO teams are always really good at home. But, they're right back to their old ways now. So I think this, especially with the Bulls schedule, they have a really brutal schedule after the Pistons game. I think they play a lot of the top 8 teams, which they're only 3-8 against so far this season. Nothing like Miami, who is 11-3 against the same teams. Not to toot our own horn, but yeah, it's very possible for Miami, especially considering how the type of offense they play right now is kind of gone crazy. And if they keep that up, I think so. But if they get Jimmy back and Bam, there's also the possibility that there's going to be an adjustment period. So adjustment period might cost them some wins here and there, but in the long run, who cares? Because you're going to have to adjust sooner or later, and it's much better to do it sooner, and especially at home with this long homestand. Get a lot of practices in, especially because you're going to be at home. So I think Spoelstra would much rather have the adjustment period coming now with guys getting healthy. And I said this to Cooper Moorhead. They're primed for a big run after February, after their last big road trip they have in the middle of February. I think that's when you're going to see the seedings really start to matter. So I'm not worried about the 2 seed or stuff like that right now, or the 1 seed even, but I think they have a chance. I still think they'll probably be hovering around that 2-3 spot by the end of these 2 weeks. But I'm not going to be worried about that as much until come late March, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Sean, I mean,
everything Marco said, but in the short term too, Chicago and the Nets, they play each other. They also have some tough games over the next week. I was looking ahead and looking at their schedule. So that helps in the short term too, to have those tough matchups. That's the thing about the NBA season. Like, we've went through kind of the tough part and we have greener grass ahead of us. Mm-hmm. Whereas some of these teams still haven't went on their West Coast trip. They haven't had all the road games that we had. And so that starts to balance out as you get through the end. But I think, the way that we played, the way that we've survived, it's going to pay off, like Marco said, as the schedule gets a little bit easier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the fact that the 1 seed is even in play for this team is nothing short of unbelievable. So once again, hashtag Spoach of the Year, hashtag I love Kyle Lowry, and all these guys are fantastic. Last heat question before we move on. Would you start Victor or Duncan? I'm going Duncan. Whether you want to say you want to start a shooter, if you want to say Strus, whatever, by all means. I think it's going to be Duncan starting. But the bench lineups do really intrigue me, say, of a Depot, Hero, Strus, Caleb, Dedman. That sounds pretty to me. Or you can shorten the rotation after that. I think it's going to be Duncan. Anyone else disagree here?
I mean, I think the area that Depot kind of replicates is a combination of Caleb and Gabe. Like, he doesn't replicate the shooting of Strus or Duncan. So if anyone's going to lose minutes, I would say it's either of those two. Yeah. I don't think anyone gets squeezed out completely. I think Spo's going to be creative in what he does. I think we're talking fast forward to the playoffs. Like, when you need the certain type of defender, type of shooter, I think that the flexibility and versatility that he has now with all these guys is going to be huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think Duncan's definitely still going to start, whether it's him or Strus. Like Sean said, his skills don't overlap with those guys. Victor's going to be a guy you're going to look for more in the Gabe role, because he's more like a guy who goes downhill, creates the pick and roll. Way more of a catch and shoot guy, as we've mentioned before. He shot the same percentages as Gabe Vincent is now, so you're not going to be looking to him to be a big volume shooter. You're just going to be looking to him to be a competent spot-up guy. And I think Spoelstra just likes having the options. And I think the Heat fans should like that they have options. You don't look to trade everybody right now. Maybe if something comes up that is, attractive, Riley's going to jump on it like he did the Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala trade.
Yeah.
But if that move isn't available for you, I don't know why you're pushing to, push guys out. Whenever, Tiffany Meeks of Miami Heat always mentions is rotations. Rotation, yeah. Shout out to those guys. The rotations always clear themselves up eventually. It really it isn't that much of a headache for coaches, because stuff clears up for them, whether it's injuries or whether it's guys that play better while some guys aren't playing as well. The decisions get easier the more you get into the season, and I don't think fans should be stressing about it too much.
Yeah, there's I know I was someone spearheading a countdown, but like I'm completely of the belief that this team really is not going to make a trade. Like you said, unless something fantastic pops up, which I don't see it happening. We have our guys, we have shooters, and we have guys that need shooters to complement them to maximize their skill set. So the Heat are in a really good place right now. Not really looking to change much, just looking to get healthy. But I do want to move it over. We do love to highlight a young player. Typically, we're on the show. So I want to highlight Anference Simons, however you want to pronounce it. He's been unreal over the last few games, with Damian Lillard potentially even being done for the year. There's been rumors of that. We're really going to be able to see how good this player can be. Over his last, I believe, 6 games, could be 5 games, averaging 28, 7.5, and 3 on, I believe, 50, 40, 90 splits. Unreal what he's been able to do recently. So I just want to play a quick game, this or that. So we got 5 other young players that I think are somewhat comparable to Simons and the way that he's been playing recently. So I actually flipped the list here. Long term, would you rather have Simons or Tyrese Halliburton? Marco, I'll go to you.
Ooh, I'd rather have Reese. I think Simons has, taken longer to develop, and I think Reese is more of a ready now kind of guy. But the potential, I think Simons has a higher ceiling, whereas Tyrese has a higher floor. But right now, I think I'm taking Reese, especially because I've loved him coming out of college from the beginning. Yeah. So I think I'd probably go with him right now.
Yeah, he's one hell of a player. He's had a great stretch too. Don't want to not give him enough credit as well. Sean.
Yeah, I think Halliburton also. And both these guys are kind of hidden from mainstream NBA. Like, most people aren't watching a lot of Blazers and Kings, so you're not really familiar with these guys. But I think like Marco said, the ceiling is a lot higher for Simons. Halliburton could be very good also, but I think he's more polished, and so in the short term, he's definitely the better player for sure.
Yeah, I really wonder what it looks like for Simons. Say if they do move Dame, and maybe you look at Simons, you say, okay, this offense is yours. Show us what you can do. I would love to see them give him that opportunity if they decide to blow it up, which I believe they should. But anyways, I think I agree with you guys here. I think I'll take Halliburton. I compare him more so to a Malcolm Brogdon type, where like you don't want him to be your lead guard, but he's a really good combo guard, and he's got great playmaking skills, great everything. Honestly, like he's just a really good player, really sound, easy to play with, fits around a bunch of players. So really like Halliburton there. We'll move forward here. Simons or Cole Anthony? I know a lot of people don't know how good Cole Anthony's been this year. He hasn't been the most efficient, but I believe he's averaging like 25 and 5. Obviously on a bad team, has missed a few games. But Marco, who are you taking here?
Ooh, I don't know if this is controversial or not. Cole Anthony. I think I go Cole Anthony because Cole hasn't. This is already his second year. I'm pretty sure this is second year. Don't correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
it
wrong
is.
on that. Okay, and I think him is he's shown more in his second year than Simons did in his second year, but there's a caveat there where Simons didn't have the opportunities that
Mm-hmm.
Cole had to work through his mistakes and develop like that. But I feel like Cole Anthony's he's improved more on where he's at right now in terms of where Simons was at this point in his career. So, and I really like Cole Anthony too. I for some reason watched a lot of Magic games this year, uh, only because of Franz Wagner and Cole Anthony. So shout out to those two. But yeah, I think I'd go with Cole here. But I think it's a lot closer than I would have even imagined before the season started,
Yeah,
considering how bad Cole
I
was
think it's
last year.
really, really close.
Yeah.
Sean, which one are you
Yeah,
taking here?
I think I would also go Cole, and I think to your point, like even if they're not going to trade Dame, I think this makes the possibilities of trading CJ a lot more appealing. Like he's a piece, and maybe you can see if Simons plus Dame, it's not a championship combo, but like can that elevate a little bit? Maybe keep Dame around, make him happy. CJ's a good scorer, but if you're not ready to completely blow it up, I think that could be the piece you could move to CJ, and that would then, I think answer is if Simons can do this when Dame's on the floor, because right now he's like the number one option. And so sometimes it's like opportunity is why he's playing so much better. So I think right now I would stay with Cole, but I think Simons, it's definitely an interesting discussion on that one.
Yeah, I think I like Cole's game. Obviously, I think he does more, but I actually might take Simons here. I might be crazy for saying that, but he's just smooth with the way that he does things. Like the scoring just feels so natural. Cole Anthony's also a really good scorer, but something about Simons, like I get Zach LaVine vibes a little bit. Like there's a real smoothness to his game with the handle, but he's also incredibly explosive as well. Not that Cole isn't, but I just think Simons, he kind of has something to him there where it's hard to replicate it. But anywho, we'll keep moving here. This
How
one's
tall is
interesting.
Simons?
6'4". I think Cole Anthony's 6'1"
He
or
doesn't
6
look
foot.
that tall.
Yeah, no, he does not, but surprisingly lanky dude. Anywho, let's go to the opposite of lanky. Desmond Bane, obviously unbelievable player this year. I think he's averaging like 17, 4, and 3 on like ridiculous efficiency. One of the reasons why the Grizzlies are where they are. Simons or Desmond Bane? I feel like there might be a consensus here, but Sean, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I go Desmond Bane. His shooting ability, he's doing it next to another player. Ja and him fit together perfectly. And then Brooks is the same kind of the same player. Like they just have great pieces in Memphis. I know we talked about some teams that are kind of off the radar. Memphis shouldn't be off people's radars. They're really, really, really good, and they're great, really fun to watch. So I would definitely go Bane.
Okay, Marco.
Ooh, man, this you hit me with a tough one here actually because I think this all depends on fit too, because it depends on what kind of team you have. Because I don't
Mm-hmm.
think you put Simons with John Morant and you get the same kind of results. I think you get good results. I don't think you get the same because I think Desmond Bane is the perfect kind of second guard to have with a ball handler like Ja. He's a perfect catch and shoot. Perfect can attack off the dribble with the first, with the bent defense. He's shown that ability to put the ball on the floor way more this year, and it's actually surprising me as well. But for now, I'm going to go with Desmond, but not by much. And that surprises me because I didn't really like Simons that much considering his first two seasons. But I think he's shown enough growth where he's going to make you think about that. But I think I'd go with Desmond right now. I think I like Desmond way too much. I wanted the Heat to draft him, and I don't want to beat that drum again because I have for the past 2 years. He might be in Toronto right now even if Miami did draft him, but maybe he isn't. So we'll never know.
Yeah, Bane is watching him play. Like Sean was saying, just watching the Grizzlies play as a whole is just a beautiful thing. They play beautiful basketball. Marco, as you know, I've been a big proponent of both Taylor Jenkins and James Borrego and the Grizzlies and the Hornets since this show has started over, or more or less a year ago. Huge fans of both of those teams. I think the Grizzlies are very legit. We'll get there in a little bit talking about the Grizzlies. I also will take Bane, but I feel like this is something where Bane is like almost getting really close to being as good as he could possibly be. Whereas Simons, like I think has a lot more room to grow. We'll see if he ends up getting there. I trust Bane to hit his highest of possibilities more so than I trust Simons, but things can change. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season, especially if Simons gets all of that opportunity. So this one's one that I think is actually, at least when I was writing the question, I thought it was 50-50. Simons or Poole? Jordan Poole from the Warriors.
I'll go first with this one because I think I'd rather go with Simons here. I think if you're putting Simons in the Warriors, he might be putting up similar numbers. Of course, Jordan's also a second-year guy who's shown more in his second year than Simons did. But again, that's about opportunity, blah, 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 blah. But I think I'd still go with Simons even with that said because I think Poole – him and Poole are guys that need the ball in their hands to really be kind of effective. Whereas I think both of them can be good in secondary roles, but I think you want Poole in more of that secondary role. And if your team's going to be good enough to say just an average team, I think Poole isn't going to be good enough to where he's going to be your lead ball handler on a decent to average team. Where I could see Simons being that ball handler for a decent to average team like that. So I think I actually go Simons here, which. That does make me think a bit, but I think this is the first one I'd go Simons on.
Okay, definitely some good reasoning.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Warrior system obviously makes him look very good, and I think he's talented, but I don't think he can ever be being Poole like a second or third type option. And Simons might not either, but I think his potential could get there. Whereas Poole, it's to me more of a product of being in Golden State around those guys. And maybe we realize, maybe if Poole gets traded out or if he leaves on his next contract, that he's more than that. But at this point right now, I think I would stick with Simons.
Yeah, I agree there. Poole doesn't feel like a guy that would be very, I don't see him as a starter on a really, really good team. I could see Simons being a starter on a pretty good team. Poole reminds me, he's like very Jordan Clarkson-esque. He can be a very valuable player, but at the same time, there's some moments where why is he taking that shot? That's not necessary. Doesn't fit the offense. That's what happens with the Poole is he's so smooth. Him and Simons are very similar in that aspect, but I feel like Simons doesn't take those really stupid shots, and Jordan Poole will take about 3 or 4 of them a game, which is why his efficiencies are quite low despite playing in one of the most efficient offenses in the NBA. So last one here. I feel like this one might be chalk, but I just want to hear the answers. Simons or Tyrese Maxey?
I'm going to go Simons. As someone that is here in Philadelphia, I do not like Tyrese Maxey. I think it's probably being here and hearing how great he is and how he's the next greatest thing. And, he's better than Ben Simmons and he's a future all-star. I think he's walked into a great opportunity, and in the dysfunction of Philadelphia where Tobias is not playing very well, Joel is playing great. He's walked into that opportunity, and his stats are kind of a product of that. So I think that Simons has a higher ceiling, and that's why I would go with him.
Okay. Marco?
I don't know if you expected it to go chalk this way because.
So you're taking Simons too?
By let's say it's 51%, and that 51 is margin for error is 0.001 or something like that. Because I think I'd rather go Simons here, which is kind of funny considering this is Maxey, who was another guy that I wanted the Heat to take instead of Precious. This list is pretty long and it's kind of depressing. So I think I'd rather go Simons here. I think for me, it's mostly about the downhill stuff because Maxey, it took him a while to be a good finisher. I don't think he's still a great finisher right now. He's getting better at it. But I think Simons is more of that juice that's more sustainable for, downhill kind of pressure that I like in a guard that's that are both kind of scorer first guards like that. So I think I'd go Simons there, but Maxey, he's been a hell of a player this season, and I think Jackson Frank wrote something about him that I really like, that the Sixers have let him work through a lot of trouble early in the season, and it's paying off right now. But I think I'd go Simons here by probably the smallest percentage.
That's interesting. It is really, really close for me. I will personally take Maxey, maybe because I had a draft crush on him. He was a guy I genuinely thought the Heat were going to draft when he made it there to 20, but we ended up not drafting him, as you guys know. I think Maxey is definitely the lower ceiling player because Simons just has that athleticism that is hard to find. The burst, like the explosiveness, probably a better handle than Maxey too. But something about Maxey, I just feel like he has like that chip on his shoulder, like those things that you really can't teach mentally, where he might actually end up working out in a city like Philadelphia that genuinely hates their basketball players. I think Maxey could end up working out there. So I like Maxey. The ability to finish he's like overly physical, but I think once he understands how to not be overly physical and jump at centers like a running back, I think there's a pretty good chance Maxey's going to be a 20 PPG guy for like multiple years. So I'll take him. But I definitely understand the reasoning. Like Simons has a ridiculously high ceiling. I think someone asked it earlier. What do we think his ceiling is? I think it's Levine-esque. Maybe not as efficient, maybe not like as high volume, but like a 22 points per game, like Zach LaVine, like fifth year Zach LaVine, is something I could really see in the cards for him. He's a really good player, and he probably has more on-ball capabilities, which is enticing to say the least.
They might have to attach him to the $1.2 billion they're going to have to trade with Tobias and Ben, though, right? He might be the sweetener to take all that billions of dollars.
True. This is a fantastic question. Sexton or Simons? Last question here on Simons.
Oh man, this is kind of one of those team building things that I was talking about earlier with Cole Anthony or Anthony. Is how are you building your team? And if you want Colin or Anthony to be your secondary ball handler, I think I'd probably go Colin because he's shown more in terms of how long they've been in the league. I think they've been in the league for almost the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have Colin right now because he's shown more from what we've seen, and I think he's a better downhill guy. Which is Anthony's a really good downhill guy considering how small he is. But so Colin Sexton's, I think only 6'1", if that.
Yeah.
I think that's generous. He's still really physical. He's also a better defender. They're both not great defenders. I think Colin just tries harder. He knows where to be sometimes, whereas Simons is still working on that defensive end, and they're both not great, but I think I'd rather have Colin right now. But it's a lot closer than I would have thought before the season, which is, again, with a lot of these, is like you didn't expect Simons to be in this kind of conversation, and I don't think the Blazers thought of that as well, and that might be why they might be thinking of making more moves than even we originally thought before the season started.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I will take, similar to the Maxey situation, I will take Sexton over Simons. He's just a better version of Tyrese Maxey, so I can't take Tyrese Maxey and then not take Colin Sexton because that's ultimately where you kind of want Maxey to be. Sean, any different thoughts here?
Yeah, I think this summer when we were rumored to be going after him or Kevin Love, in the trade talk over the summer, I referred to Colin Sexton as Kendrick Nunn with a rat tail. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to take Colin Sexton because of that take. So, I'm going to go with Simons. I think Sexton's a better player, but I got to stand strong with my take on Kendrick Nunn with a rat tail. So,
listen, don't let the facts get in the way of a good take, good hot take. You can't let that happen. So I kind of want to go rapid fire here, some quick analysis, but I want to go around the league. Some teams that I think are contenders or playoff contenders, whatever it may be. So let's start with the Memphis Grizzlies. Talked about them a little bit. John Morant, Dylan Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, all 95 players that they have on their bench that are somehow all good players. And Taylor Jenkins, the grit and grind culture, all that good stuff. The ghost of Zach Randolph. This team is unreal. Over their last 24 games, the Grizzlies are first in the NBA with record, 19-5. They are first in the NBA with net rating over those 24 games at 11.3, and first in defensive rating at 103, edging out the Golden State Warriors. So I'll frame it as this, because I have it listed as, are they legitimate contenders? I don't think that does them justice because I don't think they're in that tier. But would you consider them a top 6 team in the NBA specifically come playoff time?
Man, I think no, because I have the list out of my brain right now. I have without in any no particular order. I have Phoenix, Miami, Chicago, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Utah as those six that are up there above all the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the Grizzlies like right there, just missing the cut. So I'd say no right now, but I think it's a lot closer than I think a lot of us would have thought. So I think top six, no, but they're knocking on the door.
Sean?
Yeah, I think you're going to have a hard time making an argument of putting them over Golden State, Phoenix, Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I think I would take Miami in a series against them just because of our veterans, but I think it's close. Utah, that could be a second round series for them.
That's one I want to see.
Yeah,
I really want to see that.
Chicago, I think I might go Memphis in that. But I'm not a big believer in the Bulls necessarily. So, yeah, I think they're right on that borderline. And isn't there tonight? It's Memphis Phoenix or Memphis Golden State?
I think Memphis Golden State at 8, which we're trying to get everybody out of here so we can watch that.
I
know I want to watch that game too.
Yeah, that'd be a good game.
Yeah, absolutely. Two teams that play beautiful basketball. So, Sean, you kind of alluded to it. I want to ask this question as well. If they were to play the Jazz, say in a second round series, who do you have winning that series? Because I think it's really close, and I might take Memphis in that, unless the Jazz make moves.
Yeah, I mean, they seem like a team that, with their guard play, you can isolate Gobert and Hassan, especially if Hassan he outlets the ball to the wrong team and decides not to move like he did last night. I think they could take advantage of their big guys, and you've seen that with Utah on the drop defense and stuff like that. That would be a tough matchup. It would come down to home court. Can you steal one on the road, something like that? But yeah, that's a great series.
It would be fantastic. Marco.
Hell, I just put the Jazz above them, but man, would I have a hard time not picking Memphis because I think they're only a game behind each other right now, which is kind of insane. That's how good Grizzlies have been recently. But I might actually go Grizzlies if the Jazz don't make a move at the deadline. And I think they're primed to make a move. I think they're going to move off of Joe Ingles and maybe some other kind of small deal. They need guys that are good defenders because they don't have enough good defenders in the perimeter. People put a lot of stuff on Rudy Gobert in the playoffs, but I think Steve Jones Jr. and Nekias Duncan talked about this on the anniversary podcast. They said that the defense for the Jazz has been kind of not so quietly been bad in the perimeter the past couple of playoff appearances. The Clippers last year exposed that kind of stuff because they could get in the paint so easily that Rudy Gobert would end up overhelping or overextending himself because the perimeter guys would get beat so badly. And Donovan Mitchell, who has had a great offensive year, he's still not that defensive guy. And Joe Ingles has lost a big step, and Bojan Bogdanovic is probably their best perimeter defender, not named Royce O'Neal right now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of bleak in terms of perimeter defense, and that's all the Grizzlies have is really good perimeter players. So that's kind of a bad mix to have in a playoff series, and a kind of a mix that really might send Utah out early. So I think I might go Memphis there right now as currently constructed. If the Jazz don't make any other move.
I don't even know if we'll be able to see them because it looks like they're headed for 3 and 4 respectively, while the Warriors and the Suns stay at 1 and 2. But it would be one hell of a series if we did happen to get that. I hope we see it. I would probably take Memphis as well. Memphis has some perimeter defenders too. It's like they have guys that throw at Donovan Mitchell, and it is not the other way around for Utah. You saw it last year in the series. Obviously, Utah won that series. I believe it was in 5. Was it 5 or 6? 5?
5.
They won the first game. But Ja is not afraid of attacking Rudy Gobert in the drop. With the floater, that floater was a revelation, and it's going to be there. So that is the type of team that can actually make Rudy Gobert look foolish by just being strong at the rim. Like, Ja's so freaky athletic and quick that he can maybe expose him in the drop however he wants. So I want to keep moving here. Are you guys worried about the Brooklyn Nets in the playoffs? Obviously, things have not been perfect for them. I believe they dropped to the Anference Simons-led Portland Trailblazers last night with a Ben McLemore run very late in the game. Yes or no, Marco? Are you worried with the Brooklyn Nets come playoff time?
No, because I feel like we had the same discussion last year with the Nets. I think they were not that good against the really good teams last year, and I think I'm not afraid of them if I'm a lot of these upper tier East teams like the Bucks and the Heat. I'm not too scared of them, but I'm still scared of Kevin Durant, and I've said this a lot. I think Greg Sylvander, our homie Lefty Leif, has said this as well. Is the only thing you're really afraid of is Kevin Durant kind of taking over in the way he's capable of and the way he did last year. If it wasn't for, his shoe size being a little too big, the Nets probably still make the finals.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that's keeping me from, being out on the Nets in the playoffs is Kevin Durant. Uh, I think they still have a chance. That 05-06 Heat team also had trouble against the good teams. So I think there's a margin for error that you just don't get with guys like LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. So I think I'm still giving them, that kind of edge, but they're not as scary as I think a lot of teams initially thought.
Mm-hmm. Definitely agree.
Yeah,
Sean.
I mean, I think they'll tighten up on defense as we get to the playoffs. But I mean, I watched last night. I unfortunately had them as like my third end of my parlay, and they did not get it done. They couldn't defend. They were terrible on defense. And like you said, it's really Kevin Durant. It doesn't seem like they run a lot. It's just kind of like one-on-one isolation basketball. And if we're just talking about the Heat, I don't think you can beat us that way. I think you have to have a team, kind of like the Warriors or the Suns or the Grizzlies, that the ball moves, and that's what shifts our defense. I don't think isolation basketball can beat us. So do they scare me? Not as much as maybe other teams like the Bucks, for example.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the Bucks are like definitively the number one team in the Eastern Conference right now, in my opinion. The Nets would be a great series with the Bulls, the Heat, the Bucks. Probably end up taking the Nets in those situations. I think Kyrie will get acclimated. I think Harden won't be playing this poorly, but I mean, we are halfway through the season and we've seen a lot of this. So maybe this is just the way things are going to be with Harden with the rule change. But I'm not worried about the Nets. I do think they need to make like 1 or 2 or 3 moves if possible. They have that trade exception that would perfectly fit Marvin Bagley, although he wouldn't really fix a lot of their problems. Really quick from Black Chinese. Do you see the Heat making a trade or picking up someone at the buyout market? Buyout market potentially, but I would not be shocked, and I would honestly be happy if that 15th roster spot went to Caleb Martin by the end of the year. Okay, so I want to get to another question in the Eastern Conference here. I want you guys to rank these teams as currently constructed. So not accounting for trades, accounting for injuries that have already happened, not accounting for players that have not shown up to work. 5, 6, and 7 in the Eastern Conference. The 76ers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Toronto Raptors. How are you ranking them, Marco?
I kind of hate putting the Sixers here, but I'll put them at the top only because of Joel Embiid and, the kind of year he's had. I think he scored 31 in 6 straight games or something like that. Just for Joel Embiid, I'm putting the Sixers up there as the first team. And then I'm putting the Raptors over the Cavs, which I don't know if that makes me feel like a hater, but I like the Raptors in terms of how they're currently constructed and for playoff aspirations. I think their guys are just more seasoned and more capable of like a deep run. And I think I'd trust them more in a playoff setting because I've seen Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam do it in the playoffs and do it in a long run. But I don't feel good about it. And I feel like a hater because I really love the Cavs team. I remember the first month of the season, I was talking to Ethan and Greg, and I was like, I think these guys are for real. And, I was right about that. But in terms of how they're currently constructed, I think the Cavs are probably better right now, but I could see the Raptors going on like a crazy run to end the season. But I don't know. That might be my hottest take so far. Is I might put the Raptors above the Cavs.
It's crazy, but like I understand where you're coming from. Like if you've watched them play recently, like they kind of have like all their good players. Like for some reason, it never clicked mentally. Like they have OG Anunoby, who's one hell of a player. They have Pascal Siakam, who's an all-star level player, and they have Fred VanVleet, who's also an all-star level player. They're all clicking. And they have like Gary Trent Jr. and some other pretty solid players. Like this team has some juice, and they have Nick Nurse, who doesn't get credit because he got way too much credit about like 3 or 4 years ago, but he's one hell of a coach. So they have a really good recipe and a team that like you would not want to see in the first round of the playoffs. Like if somehow a 4-5 matchup was Bulls Raptors, I think that would be one hell of a series. because Scotty Barnes can do things defensively. He's not perfect. Obviously, he has his mishaps and whatever. But Sean, anywho, I don't know if you heard the question, but rank these teams, the 5, 6, 7 right now in the Eastern Conference. They got the 76ers, the Cavs, and the Raptors.
Yeah, I lean two ways. One would be the best player in that group is Joel Embiid, and I would go Sixers at the top. To the point you guys were just making about Nick Nurse, he's the best coach in the group. So I would lean Raptors also, but I like the way the Cavs fit too. So if I had to rank them, I think I would go in terms of who I want to play. If I wouldn't want to play against the Heat, or just in general ranking them
in general ranking them. My next question was going to be if you were the Heat. So I guess you stole my
So in
thunder
general ranking them, I think that the Sixers, because of Embiid, will finish higher. I think that the Cavs probably start to come back to earth just a little bit. So I'm going to go with the Raptors to finish above them, but I think that's very, very close.
Yeah, the Raptors are turning it on. Like, people need to start watching them. They're playing good. I believe so they've won 6 straight, and then 2 of their last 3 wins came at Milwaukee and at home against Utah. Why is no one talking about the Raptors? I don't know. Those are 2 huge wins in back-to-back games that for some reason is not like, I haven't heard an inkling of Raptors talk in terms of national media or whatever. But the Raptors are playing good basketball, man. They're playing really good basketball. So credit to them.
They're like, their entire roster is like 6'5" to 6'9". Like, they have no size, but they have no like small guards. It's like everybody's switchable. Everybody can share the ball. It's kind of Memphis-esque in the way that it's just really fun basketball to watch.
Mm-hmm. And they have that lead guard that somewhat Fred VanVleet is more undersized, but he also plays way bigger than he is defensively. So you don't really feel it as much. He's still one of my favorite guard defenders in the NBA. Really love the way that FVV plays. Happy for him this year. So pretty much wraps things up. Sean coming from his car. Obviously, thank you very much, Sean. That is crazy dedication right there. Hope Ariel is feeling better. And as always, Mr. Worldwide, Marco Romo. Love to have him on. Let's get to some final thoughts here. Any final thoughts or anything you want to say from around the NBA, or it could be regarding the Miami Heat? Sean, we'll start with you.
No, I mean, I think the interesting narrative that's been going on, it seems like on my timeline, is with these guys coming back, how is Spo going to figure it out? And we can all have fun, trying to be Spo and trying to make those decisions for him, but just trust that he's going to figure it out. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is that you're a Heat fan. If you don't trust in Eric Spoelstra, you should probably find a new team, because he's going to manage this. He's going to figure it out. Strus starting, Duncan coming back. If he's going to start, Omer, Dedmon, Bam, Jimmy. I mean, we have a blessing to have all these guys, and I think just appreciate it, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Marco.
Yeah, I pretty much echo what Sean says. Trust your coach. He's the best coach in the league. He's going to find a way. And I think you have enough. You didn't expect to have enough. The depth was a problem before the season started, and now it's a problem for a different reason. And you love to see it.
Yeah. Manny, popping in here.
New York Knicks suck.
This is factual information. Real quick, because we're probably not going to be talking about the Knicks much on here. Did the Knicks make the playoffs this year?
Playoffs?
I mean, I hope not.
No.
Like, I mean, they'll probably be
play
in. But do you think they make it ultimately? Are they in a first round series?
I say no.
No, I mean, I think if you're talking about those bottom end teams that we just talked about, like the Hornets, the Raptors, who are you taking the Knicks over in that group in a play-in situation?
By the end of the year, I will probably take the Pacers over them too.
By the way, one more thing. I'm sad that Ariel isn't here for 2 reasons, because he's the homie. We love to see him here, and because I couldn't rub it in his face. My Hornets are going to be better than the Knicks hot take that I had before the season started. So I feel bad about that, but I'm glowing in it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Hornets, big win against the Bucks last night. I guess that's impressive. Have they beaten the Bucks twice this year?
2 in a row.
That's crazy. That's great. LaMelo Ball, All-Star. Can't wait to see it. So I guess one question that I want to ask, because the Heat do play them 3 times within the next week or so. The Atlanta Hawks completely fallen off. Obviously, they've been kind of exposed as frauds a little bit. Trae Young is probably the worst defender in the NBA. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he is. I haven't seen anybody worse than him, outside of maybe like Enes Kanter or whatever. But they both
Chris
suck
Silva.
defensively. There you go. Well, he's technically a G League player, so I'm not going to slander him right now. But if the shoe fits, absolutely. Do you guys think the Hawks ultimately have a first round series?
I say yes. I think they're one of the teams that make it out of that play-in. But I don't think Hawks fans love that. I don't think they want it to just be a first-round fodder this year. So it's kind of disappointing. But I think they eventually make it. I think they have too much talent, and I think they're probably going to make a move. But I think it's not. They're probably going to just be a play-in. They win the play-in, and then they lose whoever they play in the first round.
Yeah, their team is not great right now. Sean, do they make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they'll be in the play-in. I think Trae Young, you get him in that one-game situation. Is he good enough to get you through?
Absolutely.
They're a team to watch at the deadline, too, because of Reddish and Hunter and Collins and all these different guys. They may try to consolidate and move some pieces because it's not really working this year. And so, last year they shook it up with a coaching change. This year, maybe that they shake it up with trying to trade some people. And, if it works, it works, and they make the playoffs. If it doesn't work, they may be a team that falls out completely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I am not so sure that they're actually going to make the playoffs. Last year, you had a bunch of players that were really punching above their own weight on both ends of the floor. Like Bogdanovich, fantastic year. Kevin Huerter, fantastic year. John Collins, fantastic year. When Hunter was playing, fantastic year. Gallinari, I don't really love the way that the guy plays, but he had a fantastic year. Capella as well. He's fallen off a little bit. They haven't had Okongwu really developing. They probably hoped. It's tough for Atlanta right now. And I know we're saying they're primed for a consolidation trade. I've always been of the belief that they were the team to watch for any of these big names, but I don't really see a big name shaking loose at this deadline. I think it's going to be just a lost season for Atlanta. Could be wrong. Last year they turned it around at this point in time as well, and they won like 20 of 25 or something, and then they ultimately became the 4 to 5 seed. But I don't know if that magic's there this year. I think they're dealing with expectations, and it's tough for them to keep up. Like these types of things just happen. So with all that being said, shout out everybody in the comments. Shout out everybody on the stream. Good night of basketball. Watch Grizzlies Warriors. Should be a fantastic basketball game. My hot take is that the Grizzlies are going to win this game. I think the Grizzlies got it. So that's it. We're done. Play the video, Manny.
Peace.
Manny.